We all remember the stories passed around in the dark, the escaped mental patient lurking in the woods, or the hook-handed killer waiting by the side of a lonely road. As we grow up, we dismiss these tales entirely. We write them off as cheap campfire tricks, fabricated by overprotective parents or bored teenagers looking for a scare. But occasionally, a police investigation hikes out into those same woods and finds a situation far more unsettling than any campfire ghost story. These legends often survive because they occupy a space where a local gossip meets documented history. When a myth is grounded in truth, it suggests that our collective imagination might be trying to categorize events that are otherwise impossible to reconcile. In the late 1980s, the town of West Hobart, Tasmania, became fixated on a house believed to be under a supernatural curse. The residents appeared to be slowly losing their sanity, leading locals to avoid the property entirely out of fear of the paranormal. When authorities finally intervened, they discovered a biological cause rather than a spiritual one. The family's water supply had been compromised by a specific local plant. A datura vine had been growing through the trees directly above the home. This plant, also known as devil's trumpet, contains powerful hallucinogens used for centuries in ritual sacrifices and spiritual ceremonies. Leaves from the vine had been falling into the family's rainwater tank for months. They were inadvertently consuming microdoses of the toxin daily, resulting in a gradual descent into delirium that mimicked the symptoms of a classic haunting. For the residents of West Hobart, the lack of a visible enemy made the supernatural the only logical explanation. They attributed their loss of reality to ghosts because the true poison was hidden in plain sight. Society often projects monstrous traits onto those who live outside its boundaries. In Switzerland, locals feared Les Loyans, a gas-masked humanoid stalking the forest. Meanwhile, in Maine, cabin owners whispered about the North Pond Hermit, a phantom thief responsible for over 1,000 break-ins. In 2013, the Maine legend was identified as Christopher Thomas Knight. He had entered the woods in 1986, shortly after high school, and completely cut himself off from the rest of the world. Knight survived decades of Maine winters in a nylon tent, enduring temperatures of 20 degrees below zero, without a doctor or a single conversation with another human being. The figure known as Les Loyans followed a similar pattern. Investigation into the gas-masked ghost revealed a harmless local resident who wore the costume to maintain privacy during therapeutic walks. After a newspaper published a photograph of the figure in 2013, the resulting media hysteria forced the individual out of the woods. They left behind their clothing and a cryptic note titled, "The Death Certificate and Will of the Ghost of Molly's." We tend to transform recluses into terrifying creatures because total human isolation is deeply unsettling. When someone chooses to disappear, the public imagination fills that silence with a monster. Some folklore is built to navigate real-world violence. The Bunny Man myth of Virginia, a killer in a rabbit suit, is loosely based on a 1970 incident where a man in light-colored clothing threw a hatchet at a car on Colchester Road. But the most significant example is the legend of Cropsey. For years, Staten Island parents warned children about a scarred, hook-handed maniac who lived in the abandoned woods and kidnapped the unwary. Beyond the hook-handed caricature lies the case of Andre Rand, a convicted kidnapper who frequented the same Staten Island woods where the legend took root. Rand worked for 2 years at the Willowbrook State School, a facility notorious for its brutal treatment of children with disabilities. This timeline tracks Rand's history, marking his release from prison in the early 1970s. Immediately following his release, a sudden spike in missing persons appears. Throughout the 70s and 80s, dozens of children disappeared near areas Rand frequented. The manifestation of Cropsey gave a name and a face to a series of disappearances that were otherwise unbearable to acknowledge. By turning a human predator into a folkloric monster, the community found a way to discuss a reality that was too dark for direct conversation. Urban legends function as a community-driven early warning system. They act as a psychological filter, making environmental toxins, extreme isolation, and human violence easier to process through the lens of fantasy. The supernatural elements are usually fabricated, but the underlying danger is always real. The monsters are fake, but the reasons we need them are not.